You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Syracuse basketball lost Judah Mintz last offseason. Judah Mintz decided to go pro, and they failed to replace him. They did not even come close. They got Jaquan Carlos from Hofstra for one reason or another, whether it was a poor fit, whether Jaquan Carlos was simply not good enough. He didn't even come close to replacing the production of Judah Mintz. Syracuse tried to get Dakota LaFew from Mount St. Mary's. They tried late to get Kadari Richmond. Unfortunately, they didn't get either of them, and Syracuse basketball didn't come close to replacing Judah Mintz. Okay, so let's relate it to this season. Jaquan Carlos is out of eligibility, and I believe he could have been a decent backup point guard had he had eligibility for next season, but he doesn't. So Syracuse basketball right now, if you look at their 2025-26 roster, they only have one point guard on it, and that is Luke Fennell, the freshman coming from Australia. We have to assume that Luke Fennell is not ready to be a starting point guard in the ACC next year. We just have to assume it. Yeah, he's a four-star recruit. He is tall. He's 6'6", four-star on 24/7 Sports and on ESPN, but on both those sites, he's ranked outside the top 100 overall. In other sites, list him as a three-star recruit. So talk to me about Luke Fennell potentially being a starting point guard in 2026-27, but for this upcoming season, no thank you. As Syracuse basketball is rolling with Luke Fennell as their starting point guard for 2025-26, I'm going to think we're in trouble unless proven otherwise, and that is that Luke Fennell ends up being amazing as a true freshman. Of course, I'll be pleasantly surprised if that were to be the case. Then you look at the other guards on the roster for Syracuse basketball, at least for now. I'm recording this on Thursday, March 20th at 3:59 p.m. Eastern. Nobody yet has entered the transfer portal for Syracuse. So the other guards on the roster are J.J. Starling, Kyan Anthony's coming in, Elijah Chapa-Moore, Kyle Cuff, Chance Westry, and Aaron Womack. He's a guard or a forward. Of those guys, who's a point guard? Nobody. Nobody there is a natural point guard. J.J. Starling and Kyan Anthony are probably best equipped because they're good with the ball in their hands, but they are not point guards. So Syracuse's only point guard on the roster for next year, as of right now, is a freshman, Luke Fennell. So they desperately need a starting point guard. You agree with me? You disagree with me? Comment in the comment section below. I think starting point guard is the number one need for Syracuse basketball next season. Let's go over some possible targets, all right? The number one overall player in the portal just so happens to be a point guard, and that's Dedan Thomas from UNLV, 6'1", 170 pounds, top overall transfer on 24/7 Sports, number 2 overall over on On3. He's got multiple years of eligibility left, 16 and 5 assists last season, 41% from the field, 35% from the three-point line. Not the greatest defender. 2024, he had an Evan Maya defensive rating of 0.43. And then this past season, it was 0.08. Unfortunately, while I think he'd be a great fit for Syracuse, he'd certainly improve the talent level on the roster, they do not appear to be one of the teams going after him. On3's Joe Tipton released an article, and Syracuse was not mentioned in the article as possible destinations for Dedan Thomas. So I am assuming that the Orange are out on him, that there is no way he is coming to Syracuse. Let's talk about Brock Harding from Iowa. I think he would be a good fit for the Orange. He's 6 foot, 160 pounds, a 4-star transfer over on On3 and 24/7 Sports. He's going into his junior season, so he's got multiple years of eligibility left. He averaged 9 points and 5 assists last season, 45% from the field, 40% from the three-point line. And on top of that, Brock Harding is an improving defender. In 2024, his Evan Maya defensive rating, you ready for this, was a negative 0.54. But then in 2025, this past season, he improves dramatically to a 0.73. On top of that, he averaged 1.5 steals per game, which was 7th overall in the Big Ten. So this is someone that can score a little, who could pass a little, can play some defense, and shoots the ball at a pretty high percentage. Sounds like a pretty good fit for Syracuse, right? Unfortunately, TCU has reportedly been connected to him. We'll see where that goes. Haven't seen any other schools connected to Brock Harding. I do hope that Syracuse gets involved for him. And if they do, I will certainly let you know here on Locked On Syracuse. Finally, let's talk about a point guard that you're probably going to hear about again. Dejour Reaves from Iona. 6 foot, 170 pounds. He is not yet rated on 24/7 Sports or on On3, but I'm not necessarily worried about that because sometimes those ratings, they just take time to kick in. He averaged 17 points a game last year. That's good. 6 rebounds per game for a point guard at 6 foot. That's pretty good. 2 assists per game. Not the greatest. 45% from the field. Okay. 34% from the three-point line. Not bad. He only has 1 year of eligibility left, but the reason why I think we're going to hear of Reaves again, and I'll make a long-term prediction right now, I think that Dejour Reaves is going to end up being the starting point guard for Syracuse next year. Ready? He's from Syracuse, New York, and Syracuse needs a point guard. Sounds like a perfect match. However, he is not one of my top choices. I'm not saying he would be a bad player for Syracuse, but here's why I don't think he should be a top priority for the Orange, just because he is from Syracuse, New York, and is actually a pretty good player. It's got nothing to do with the fact that he is from Iona. It has to do with the player himself and the fit for Syracuse. I don't necessarily mind a score-first point guard, but if J.J. Starling returns, doesn't that kind of get redundant for Syracuse basketball, having Reaves and Starling in the backcourt? Now, Syracuse, they did have 2 starting guards in 2024 that were score first, Judah Mintz and J.J. Starling, but Reaves is not on the level of Judah Mintz, not even close. If J.J. were to leave in the transfer portal, and I hope it doesn't happen, I think Dejour Reaves becomes a better fit for the Orange because they certainly could use some more scoring in the backcourt if J.J. Starling departs. Second of all, Reaves is not a good defender at all. I understand that he averaged two steals a game last year, but he had an Evan Maya defensive rating last year of negative 0.2. That was second worst on Iona last season. And in 2024, Reaves was with North Colorado, and he had an Evan Maya defensive rating of negative 1.05. So I guess he improved it, but it still wasn't good. I think he's a pretty good player. And if J.J. Starling leaves, Dejour Reaves certainly becomes more of a fit for Syracuse. But he's not a good defender, and he is a score-first point guard. I would look elsewhere for now for a point guard. I would love Dedan Thomas. I would love Brock Harding, but those guys don't appear to be options for Syracuse right now.